with RouteFabric. In today's session, we're going to talk about Tableau fundamentals. In this section, we will cover the user interface and its elements. So the user interface elements have specific names which you should be knowing. Next, we will cover the core concepts like aggregation and granularity. So these concepts are extremely important and you have to know them by heart. So let's begin with the fundamentals. In Tableau, we have three main pages: start page, data source page, and workspace area. So workspace area is also known as worksheet or tab. So let's start with the start page. So this is the page that welcomes you when you open Tableau. The start page consists of three areas: connect, open, and discover. Under connect area, you can connect to a new data source, or you can even open a data source that you have saved before. So Tableau is very powerful when it comes to supporting different source types. Mainly, you can connect to a file or a server. So for example, you can connect to Excel file, text file, JSON, Microsoft Access, PDF file, spatial file, statistical file. To connect to a CSV file or TSV file, you have to use text file option. CSV is a comma separated file and TSV is tab separated file. So both of them are text files, but column separator is different. Spatial files are for your maps. So you learn in details about spatial files in the map section. If you want to connect to SPSS file or R file, you have to select the statistical file option. So what about the server type data sources? In Tableau desktop, you can connect to pretty much all kind of data servers. So you can connect to Microsoft SQL, MySQL, you can connect to Oracle, and many more. And you can see Tableau supports connection to a wide variety of sources, such as uh, big data platforms like Cloudera Hadoop, and then you have cloud applications like Salesforce and cloud database like Amazon Redshift, right? So basically you can connect to any kind of data source with Tableau. So this makes Tableau very powerful when compared with other visualization tools. So you might not need to connect to all these things, but you should know how to connect to Tableau server. We will cover the same in theory later in our course. Now in the left, I'll just close this. So here in the left pane, you can see previously saved data sources under your Tableau repository. So as you can see, there are two saved data sources for now. So if you save any data source, you can access it from here. But please note that removing a file from this area does not remove the original file, because these are just shortcuts. So if you remove it from here, it doesn't mean that it is getting removed from the data source. So now let's continue with the open area. In open area, you can open the recent workbooks that you have worked on. So when you open Tableau desktop for the first time, this area will be empty. When you create and save new workbooks, the more recently opened workbooks will appear here. So you can hide, you can also pin the workbook icons. So under the open area, you can also explore sample workbooks. So if you look here, we have some Tableau workbooks. So I would suggest you go and play around with these workbooks and try to understand the Tableau features. Now let's continue with Discover panel. In the Discover panel, you can see there are popular visualizations from Tableau Public. You can go ahead and read blog posts. You can watch training videos. And if you look at the right side bottom, you'll see that Tableau makes announcements. Most of the time, you will have a link to the Viz of the week. So you can see the best visualization for the week from this place. So I suggest you check this area regularly, because it will help you learn more about Tableau, and also it will be useful to become more creative and gain more perspective. So now let's connect to our data source. Let's go to connect to a file. We'll open a Excel file. So for this section, we'll be using sample superstores Excel file. Okay, let's look at this. Let's double click it, and now we have come to this data source page. So Tableau brings you to this page just after starting the initial connection with your data source. So this page is where you set up the connection with your data source for future analysis. You can also make several configurations in here before starting your analysis. So we have four main areas on the data source page. One is left panel, the other one is canvas area, and then data grid and metadata grid. So let's start with the left panel. First of all, you can click the Tableau icon to toggle between the start page and the data source page. The left panel shows the details about your data source. You can also add more data sources here. It's not like there should be only one data source. You can add more data sources as well. And you can use this data interpreter to structure your tables. So we will look into data interpreter later in this course. And as you already know, we are connected to this sample superstore Excel file. So here you can see Excel sheets from our Excel file, right? These are various worksheets from our Excel file. So for the file type connection, you can see the file name and the worksheets. So what for the server type connections? For the server type connections, you will see the database or schema name and then the tables. So now let's add the order sheet into the canvas area. So you can either double click it or you can drag and drop it here. So canvas area is a place where you can create joins, unions, etc. And if you look at the top right corner, you have a data source filter. Data source filters are useful if you need only subset, only a part of huge data set. So you can add filter from here and reduce the data size dramatically, which will eventually increase your dashboard performance. So here you can change the connection type between live and extract. In Tableau desktop, the default connection type is live, but you can change it to extract as well. So this option is not available in Tableau public, because in Tableau public, the only connection available is extract. Now here we have our data grid. So in the data grid, you can see first 1000 rows of your data source. So you can also set a specific number if you want to review your data. So here you have an overview of your columns, and columns are also called as fields. So now let's analyze the data we have. So this data is from an American superstore or a supermarket. So if you look at, you have order ID, you have order date, you have ship date, what is the mode, and then you have customer ID, who bought this order, customer name, segment in which this item falls, which country, which city, which state, and then the postal code. You also have the product ID, which category this product falls under, and then you have the product name. So how much sales were generated from this product, how much quantity of product were sold for this order, and then what is the profit they got from this order. So now if you look at it, each column has a default data type which is automatically assigned by Tableau. Sometimes Tableau assigns incorrectly the data type. Okay, so you can change in the data type if you find, so if you think that this should not have been string, this should have been date and time, so you can come and change it from here. So in Tableau, there are several data types and each data type is represented by different icon. So the icons are pretty descriptive, but let's just go over them once. Okay, now the ABC letters represent the text values, like strings, and then the hash represents it's a numerical or an integer value. Calendar represents date values, calendar with time represents date and time values. True or false represent it's a boolean type, and then the globe represents a geographical value. So these are the available data types in Tableau. So if you want to change the data type of a field, first click on the data type icon for that particular field, and then you can select the new data type as per your requirement. Okay. Now if you click on this drop down button here, you can make simple modifications, like you can rename it, you can create an alias, or if you look here, you can sort it as well. And if I right click, you can hide it as well. Okay. So you can also make new fields from this existing fields by using calculations. We will see calculations later in our course. So now if you want to select multiple columns or multiple fields, you have two options. If you want to select the fields one by one, what you can do is click on a field, hold Control key and click on other fields. So this is how you select multiple fields. The other option is, if you want to select from order ID to customer name all the fields, just click here, hold Shift key and click on customer name. So all of these sheets will get selected. Now if you want to select all the fields, you don't need to use Control or Shift key. All you have to do is just go here and click in this area in the upper left corner, and you see all the fields get selected. Okay, so we've talked about data grid. Now let's talk about metadata grid. So if you click this button, what happens is, if you see here, these were your columns, right? So if you click this button, your column turns into rows, and Tableau gives you information about your columns. So this information is called as metadata, which is nothing but data about your data. So the metadata grid becomes really useful if you have many fields and you want to hide or rename multiple columns quickly. So from here you can directly do it very quickly. Okay, so now let's look at the workspace area. Click on the worksheet button, and so this is the workspace area, and you can always go back to the data source page by clicking on the data source. Okay, coming back to the worksheet, if you want to switch between the workspace and the start page, just click on the Tableau icon at the top left, and there you go. So in Tableau workspace, you have a menu. This is the menu, and this is toolbar, this is the status bar, and this is the sidebar. So there are four different four different types of things in Tableau workspace. So the sidebar consists of data and analytics panel. You can hide the sidebar by clicking on this icon, and if you want to bring it back, you can go and click on the same icon again. So we can check the visibility of these four areas from this window tab. If I click on this window menu, toolbar, status bar, sidebar, and workspace, right? Okay, now if you lose any of these areas, you can bring it back from here. Let's focus on data panel now. Okay, so this is what is called as data panel. So Tableau, it automatically classifies your columns as measure or dimension. So basically, if your column contains a numerical data, it becomes a measure, and if your column contains textual data, it becomes a dimension. There is one exception to this rule. If the column name ends with ID, Tableau considers that column as a dimension even though it contains numeric data. You have to remember this, okay? So in general, textual data is assigned as dimension and numerical data is assigned as measure. So, and if you see here in the data panel, the column names here are same as that in the data source page. So the data panel and the data source page are the mirrors of each other. If you change something in one place, it will be reflected in the other part as well. So let's rename this category to category 1 and click enter. If I go to data source, you can see here it has changed to category 1. Now if I want to, if I rename it from here and change it back to category and go to my workspace, you see it's changed back to category. So now in the data panel, you see the connection here and the table name that you're currently connected to. So you can double click on that data source name to go back to the data source here. So this will be really helpful if you have several data sources here, right? You can directly, whatever data source you want to go to, you can double click on that data source and you'll go there. So as you already know, the data type of the field is represented with an icon. Okay, so the color of the icon represents type of the field. The blue icon represents that the field is discrete, and the green icon represents that the field is continuous. Please note, the color does not represent measure or dimension. It is about discrete or continuous. Discrete is blue and continuous is green. So the fields that are written italic, here if you see, there are a couple of fields that are written in italic. So these are auto-generated fields by Tableau. So when we were looking at our data, we didn't had any latitude, number of records, columns. So this is, if you have geographic data, Tableau automatically creates this latitude and longitude. So these are auto-generated fields by Tableau. Now, when you select a field, suppose I'm selecting category and you drop it, Tableau highlights the areas where you can drop the sheets. Okay, so these are shelves. These are all shelves. These are the marks card, and this is the main area. Okay, so in the marks card, you have elements like color, size, text, etc. We will use the marks card to add more details to our chart. Now, for the shelves, you have row shelves, column shelf, pages, and filters. You can always hide and unhide this. You can right click here and I say filter shelf. If I uncheck, it's gone. If I check back again, it is here. Okay.